What's up, rockers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at TalkLouder_podcast. And you can check out our website, talklouderpodcast.com, where you will find links to our previous episodes and links to our merch. I'm Metal Dave, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and we are closing out the year 2022. And so we thought it'd be kind of fun to just recap the past year and maybe touch on some memorable moments, highlights, albums, concerts, just random thoughts in general about this the past year here on the Talk Louder podcast and in general. I want to start by saying that the highlights for Jason, I'm going to speak for you here. We've already covered your Fronting Accept and Fronting Armored Saint. We have 2 episodes dedicated to each of those adventures, if you will. So if you're interested in more on that, go check out Jason with Accept and Jason with Armored Saint.
I don't think I'm allowed to say those are my favorite episodes, though.
Well, they're definitely unique, and I'll tell you this, none of us were expecting to have those episodes even just a couple months ago. So, yeah, that was fun.
I'm glad that we have like a super nerd bicycle we can get on, a medium to talk about my adventures.
Yeah.
Whether it's smarmy or I'm too close to it to be talking about that, or why should I have an opinion about it, or want to go through the photo album with Uncle Dave or whatever. But you know what I mean? I think that I'm torn a little bit, to be honest, which is why I don't think I'm allowed to have those episodes be my favorite episodes.
Well, that's fine. They're out there for people to check out, and I encourage you to do so, because, I mean, wow, what a couple of stories there that we weren't expecting when this year started. Yeah, I wanted to just, besides talk about some of our episodes this week and just random memories in general, I wanted to start with some albums that came out this year. And, I didn't really think of this year as a particularly great year for albums that came out that really grabbed my attention until I started recounting just which albums did come out this year. And actually, it was a pretty good year. There were more good records than I remembered once I started putting some thought to it. And I'll just get started right off the bat because they're fresh on my brain because I just saw them. I got to give mad props to Queensryche.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Wow, their new album is called Digital Noise Alliance. Digital Noise Alliance, that's a mouthful. And what a great album. I tell people, if you haven't paid attention to Queensryche for a while and you're a fan of the band and you go back to the classic albums like The Warning, Operation Mindcrime, Empire, I would say Digital Noise Alliance stacks up very nicely alongside those classic records. And I really, really enjoyed it. It's been getting played a lot here at my house. And one of the things I like about it is it offers a complete, like what I like to think of as a listening experience. Now, obviously, the album is segmented into tracks, but it has such a great flow to it. Like one song just makes perfect sense after the other and into the next. And it just has this cohesion that really sounds great. Todd Latorre, I think this is his 4th or 5th album with Queensryche. He's been in the band 10 years now.
Yeah, or longer.
Yeah, he obviously replaced Jeff Tate, which is, I know a lot of people thought, that's impossible to do. But Todd has done an amazing job. He sounds great on this new album. He sounds great on the previous records he's been on. And I've seen him twice this year in concert. Queensryche opening for Judas Priest, and he's done a great job live on stage as well. So big shout out to Queensryche for Digital Noise Alliance. Great album.
I have to confess, I do not have the record yet, underlined yet. I have heard 2 songs live. I heard something online not that long ago, and have been in touch with Todd, and I don't want to bring up, I don't know, while I'm in conversation with Todd, I'm afraid to bring up the new record because I don't have any time with it yet.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, and you know this already, but recently myself, as well as you, have become a little bit closer to Todd via the podcast.
Yeah.
But then a little bit of the history, like he saw that. Anyway, me and Todd we converse. And so I don't want to be caught in a conversation with him about the new record and have to be able to go, conversation over. I don't know enough about it to give you any compliments. But what I was going to say is, since you and I have talked to him in length on the podcast, he's very serious about his craft.
Definitely.
I can only imagine that record is being Todd driven.
Yeah. It's a solid album. Again, I tell people that have been fans of Queensryche in the past or continue to be Queensryche fans that if you haven't been paying attention to their last few records because you kind of dismissed them because Jeff Tate's no longer in the band, big mistake, big mistake. And
I agree with that.
I would put Digital Noise Alliance up there with some of their best work. It's a really good album. I've given it a lot of play.
You realize I'm playing devil's advocate here when I say this, but you realize those are like fighting words.
I know
to some people,
okay.
and that's the point you're making. So
I'll stand by them.
Like I love The Warning. I love the first EP. I love it's important to know what you fell in love with about a band.
Yeah,
and then for them to go through changes, and you're not really with them anymore. You're not following them anymore. And then you hear all of this changes happen. And, Eddie and Michael are the only original guys now. And it's like, well, hold on a second. And if I just cool my jets for a moment, I bet the way Michael plays and the way Eddie plays and those guys are involved, it's going to fucking sound like Queensryche.
Yeah.
There's going to be moments where it goes off a little bit, but it's at the end of the day, those guys play the way they play. They haven't changed the way that they play just because Jeff Tate's not around.
Yeah, I feel like some of their later albums with Tate sort of wandered off into some odd territory. People got confused. I think they might have got a little too experimental for their own good. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the points I'm trying to make here about the new album. And with Todd joining the band in general, I feel like they've gone back to what they do best. And they have a singer who's capable of doing it.
Yes.
And that's why I encourage people, if you haven't heard the new album and you are a fan, you will not be disappointed. It's a really, really great album. And then also in that same realm, if you're talking about classic metal bands, I also wanted to give a shout to a couple other great albums. If you're a fan of Queensryche, you're probably a fan of Saxon. Carpe Diem is the latest album that came out earlier this year in February, I believe. Another solid record. Saxon is one of those bands that has put out 4 or 5 records over the past few years, and they're just great, man. Again, if you were ever a fan and you stopped paying attention after Crusader or whatever, this is a really good album. And we should mention that drummer Nigel Glockler also has another band called 6x6 that put out an album this year that I think you and I were both kind of, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we were both pleasantly surprised because it's a little more in the vein of prog rock. Nigel gets to flex his prog rock muscle a little bit.
Yeah, I compared it a little bit to, it doesn't sound like King's X, but I put it sort of like in the bin next to it. In eyes shot, earshot of it. And it's prog rock, but it's more like Asia or Yes, or it's not prog metal. It's got melody, lots of melody.
Yeah.
Usually prog metal the melodies are jacked up. It's algebra. And this is not that. This is not that.
It's very easy to listen to.
Yeah, that's right.
and there's world-class musicians in that band. One guy from Saga, one guy, obviously Nigel from Saxon, and the other guy played with GTR, I believe.
Yeah, I think he was in Asia as well for a minute.
Maybe for a minute, yeah. So good calls. It's very reminiscent of Asia, yes, things like that you used to hear on the radio that were kind of considered prog rock, but they weren't so mathematically involved that they were confusing. They were very pleasing to the ear. So anyway, Saxon, and on the subject of Saxon, since we're talking about memorable highlights from the past year, we've had Nigel Glockler on the show a couple of times. We had him on recently to talk about 6x6, and go back and watch that episode. That guy is always a joy to talk to. So genuine, so much fun.
On the last episode, I don't think he liked my jokes.
Well, your jokes are an acquired taste.
They sure are. I was just going to say, I've never said my jokes are good, but especially that day, they were real. They were bricks. They were sinking bricks.
They were dying on the vine.
Yeah, he didn't like those at all.
And we should
nothing personal, of course. I love Nigel so much.
Nigel's a great guy. He's always been gracious to us with his time.
You know what it is? I love his laugh. So anytime that I think that I can make him laugh, I'm going to give it a shot. It's like going fishing. I want to catch something no matter what. I'm trying every lure in the box, right? Well, I didn't catch anything that day, but you got him to go a couple times. His laugh is so great. I love you, Nigel.
He has the greatest laugh in rock and roll. I've said that numerous times, and I mean it. It's contagious. And on the subject of great guests that we've had on the show, we should back up a minute here. We were just on the subject of Queensryche. We had Todd Latorre on the show, and man, I think he holds the record for the most time we've spent with a guest. It turned into a 3-hour episode, and it didn't feel like it at all.
I love it that he likes to talk.
He was great. I mean, I wasn't bored the least bit. It went on for 3 hours, and everything was just an amazing conversation. Worth every minute of it. So
it was it was a great case study on a few different topics, mainly how he uses his voice in Queensryche.
Mm-hmm.
If people, if it says, talk louder, Todd Latorre, and you don't know who that is, he replaced Jeff Tate in Queensryche. I repeat. He replaced Jeff Tate in Queensryche.
And he's done an excellent job, too.
Right. So we get to talk to him about vocalizing and how he's using his voice.
Yeah.
And techniques. And I enjoyed the shit out of it. And like days prior to that, he called me and we had our first really meeting. He called me. When we exchanged numbers, he called me and we had an hour-long conversation. I'm sitting in the parking lot in front of my work. Hour-long conversation. We talked about all kinds of shit under the sun about technique and vocal. And I was going, you wait, we're going to get into this again on the podcast. He goes, I'm ready. Set it up.
Yeah. He was great. Besides
might be my favorite episode of this year.
It's got to be near the top. It was really, really great getting to know him, and the conversation was just effortless. And besides all the technical vocal technique discussion, we talk about obviously Queensryche, but he used to also sing for Crimson Glory. He's got a solo career where he's done some solo records.
He's a drummer.
He's a drummer. He's an amazing drummer. He played all the drums on a previous Queensryche album. So yeah, he's just a super talented, super cool guy, and
he has a lot to say. I've heard people say this about Todd, and I get it. He has a lot to say on the drums, in the microphone, in the studio. I think Queensryche is kind of winning the lottery.
Yeah, I think they are re-energized.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not to just go all Todd Latorre baby crazy on you, but I think they're winning the lottery with that dude.
Yeah, I feel like they're re-energized. I have to admit they haven't been on my radar for quite some time, but this new album is a home run, and having Todd on the podcast definitely helped. I'm sure, because that was
And Queensryche doing 2 American legs with Judas Priest, and talking to Todd. They might do Europe with Judas. Now, I probably shouldn't. Sorry, Todd. Probably shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
But they're hoping they have all their crystals out right now, and they're really praying to the heavy metal gods. No pun intended, that they support Judas Priest in Europe, and I think that they should. It's just my opinion, whether it happens or not.
Yeah, it's a huge honor for them, and they recognize it, and they wear it well. So if Priest takes them out on additional legs,
it's a great match. Europe, it's a great match.
Totally, it's a great double bill.
Mm-hmm.
Another album I wanted to throw out there, Scorpions, Rock Believer. I thought that record was a great. I hate to call it a comeback, but I feel like they really recaptured some of their classic sounds from the era. I want to clarify this, because some people consider the classic sounds to be the 70s with Uli John Roth, and then some people consider the classic sound to be the radio sound with Blackout, Love at First Sting, that sort of thing.
I can understand the argument.
Yeah, I do too, but I'm just trying to make a very clear distinction. When I say it's a throwback to one of their classic eras, I'm talking about the 80s when they were all over the radio. I think their new album, Rock Believer, would sit nicely between, say, Crazy World and Love at First Sting, and maybe just after Blackout, somewhere in there. So if you're a fan of those Scorpions records, Rock Believer, I thought, was a great return to that type of sound. So shout to the Scorpions for that record.
I don't really have and I apologize once again. I don't have much of an opinion, because it's not on my. It hasn't been like, hey, let's hang out and listen to the new Scorpions record, which someone would have to invite me to listen to it, to give it a full review, because I'm just being straight with everyone. It's not on my shopping list to buy a new Iron Maiden record, Scorpions record, anything record, because I'm a dinosaur living under a rock. I love this album from Kiss, and this album from Riot, and this album from Rose Tattoo, and that's about it. So it's hard for me to here you go. I listened to a 2013 release of Motorhead yesterday. What's that record called?
2013. Is that Inferno?
Nope. It's the second to last Motorhead record. The last one being Bad
Magic.
Bad Magic.
Second to last was Motorizer, I believe.
No, it's out in the car. Don't make me go get it.
No, don't go get it.
But anyway, it's not one that would have been on my radar to buy. But I feel like I have a ton of Motorhead records, and I'm really glad to have seen that in a batch of stuff that I bought from Demetrius Bermudez recently. Like there's a Saxon record in there too I haven't pressed play on, that I don't know what it is either. That's not from this year either. It's probably from 10 years ago or something.
Yeah. And the more I think about Inferno from Motorhead, that's got to be way older than 2013. But so that sort of feeds into my point. There's these classic bands that are putting out records.
I'm with you. I'm giving you the props in every way. Yeah,
they're pleasant surprises. If you haven't actively pursued them and you were a fan, you might enjoy some of the latest output from Saxon, Scorpions, Queensryche. And I saw the Scorpions on their recent tour. I went to see them in Houston, and they were great. They still deliver, the hits. They're still energetic for a band of their vintage, I guess is a polite way to say it.
Sure.
And the band that was opening for them was another pleasant surprise for me this year. That band being Thunder Mother.
Thunder Mother, yeah.
Here's their latest record. It's called Black and Gold. It's a band from Sweden, and very good melodic hard rock. We had singer Guernica Mancini on the podcast.
Good job on the name.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to get the hang of it.
Practiced it for a while now, yeah.
Yeah. But Guernica was amazing. She was a great guest on the Talk Louder podcast. You can look for that episode.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Aftershock.
Aftershock, Motorhead.
Aftershock is the Motorhead record that I just listened to like 3 times in a row. Yeah.
Okay. Thunder Mother, for those who aren't familiar, the band's been around for quite a while. Granica is the second lead singer, and I believe this is probably her 3rd or 4th record with the band. Again, the new one is called Black and Gold. There it is right there. They were opening for the Scorpions. Talk about an honor. They did a whole North American tour with the Scorpions and maybe some dates in Europe, or they're about to do some dates in Europe. I don't recall, but
when she was on the show, she had fingers crossed that was going to happen.
Yeah. One of the things we learned when we had her on the show is one of her main vocal influences is Sebastian Bach. And I can hear it now that she's said that. I can hear it in the music, in her voice. I would say the music would be like right at home in that melodic hard rock 80s sound that was kind of all over the radio, like, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, maybe some Dawkins, something like that's got some melody, but it's definitely in the hard rock vein. And Granica's voice is amazing. She
has some grit in her tone.
Yeah.
So I could see how some of that nasally mid-range that Sebastian does, that a lot of people do, that is part of the style of what you described. I can see how she would cop to that.
I would say that she's probably my favorite singer that came out of nowhere, even though she didn't come out of nowhere. She's been around for a number of years, like I said, but it's the first time I've heard of her, and Thunder Mother for that matter. Right. But wow, what a powerhouse singer she is. She's also just put out a solo song or EP or something. You can look that up. She's very active on social media.
She was talking about that, but I don't remember her alluding to any release dates or anything like that. Did she do a solo?
She just put something out. Wow. I want to say it's called Inception.
Okay. Wow.
And I hope that she continues to do both, because I really enjoyed the Thunder Mother record. It got a lot of spins in my car and in my house this year. So thank you, Thunder Mother, for a great album this year. And great performance. I saw them open for the Scorpions. They were amazing. And then they did a one-off date at Stubbs here in Austin, Texas on the inside stage. So it was a tiny little thing, a big departure from the arenas they were playing with the Scorpions. And I was curious to see how this was going to translate. And they did. It was great. They worked that small stage just like they worked an arena. And it was really cool to be that close to them. On their own, they're not that well known, so there wasn't that many people there, which means I was right up. I mean, I had my nose to the edge of the stage.
Wow.
And they were great. So a lot of great stage presence, great vocalists, good, solid hard rock tunes. If that sounds like your cup of tea, check out Thunder Mother.
Yeah, you were right. Inception, Guernica Mancini.
There you go.
Yeah, she's got it going on. There's articles and all kinds of stuff going on about her past on a site called The Rock Pit. People can read all about it. Inception is the first solo single from Swedish rock singer Guernica Mancini, lead singer of Thunder Mother. Is available Golden Robot Records. You guys check it out, because it's one of Dave's favorites, and she is a fantastic singer. I need to check it out myself.
Yeah, great singer. Check out Thunder Mother and her solo stuff. Another thing that was a surprise this year is that EP from Frank Bello.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh man.
When I was just in Jersey and got to have basically a campfire with him and the Saint guys, I mentioned the video to him. I mentioned that track to him. We talked about him playing the Stratocaster in the video. He goes, well, that's the same guitar that I used in the studio. I go, I was going to say, because it sounds like a Strat. You're banging on a Strat. It's kind of punk rock style. And he goes, yeah, it's the same guitar. And I'm like, so yeah, that's natural. I told him that it was natural for him to sound that way. You know, people think Frank Bello, oh, he's an Anthrax, so it's going to sound like Anthrax. Why would it sound like Anthrax?
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't. at all.
I've only heard the one track, I got to admit, but it really surprised me because it was more punk rock than I was expecting. It's an awesome song, man. I love it. I could listen to it.
I told him that I said, I love it, but Dave likes it even more because it's more up his alley.
It's right up my alley.
What he's into. It's kind of, it's got a little bit of, it's melodic kind of punk. It's got a lot of attitude, and
it's called Then I'm Gone. That's right. That's the name of the EP and the track that I'm talking about specifically. Frank Bello, bass player from Anthrax, his first solo outing.
Throw more information on top of this is something that his book publisher, he wanted to have that piggyback his book.
Yeah.
Because he had these songs and he didn't know what to do with them, and he told the publisher about it, and the publisher heard the tracks and was like, "Oh, you got to put this out right now because the book is on the shelf. You have to do this right now." And that was kind of how that works. And publisher obviously should be a music manager of some kind. It might be. I don't know who that is. I'm just telling you how Frank tells the story.
Yeah. The songs on the EP, we had Frank on the podcast. We've had him a couple times. We had him, both times this year. I think the first time was late last year. But we had him on 2022 when he was on tour with Black Label Society, Anthrax, and Hatebreed.
Right.
And we talked a little bit about this EP. It wasn't out yet, so I hadn't heard it. But and the first time we had him on the podcast, he was promoting his book, which, by the way, is probably one of the better books I've read in recent memories. It's called, Fathers, Brothers, and Sons, I believe.
Very good. Yeah, I finally got a copy of it yet.
It's a really great
I finally received a copy, gift from a student, and haven't cracked it open yet, but I'm going to. It's not very long.
It's easy to read, and the thing I liked about it was you get to know Frank Bello, the human being, not necessarily Frank Bello, the bass player from Anthrax.
Yeah, the crazy rocker on stage flailing around.
Right. There's obviously some overlap, but what I really liked about the book was you got a glimpse into his personal life and got to understand him as a human being and, his upbringing. He speaks very highly of the strong women in his life. He gives a lot of props to the women in his life that have helped him achieve all of his success.
Both of the episodes that we did with Frank are kind of the reasons we had him on. One was for the book, and one was because Anthrax was coming through town on a tour with Black Label Society. Yeah, but if you watch both of them, you'll learn about how his feelings and our feelings about who he is in his book. He gives us a glimpse into the EP in both episodes. I believe we get him to talk about that a little bit. Now that it's out, I feel like people should give those episodes another spin. The Talk Louder, Frank Bello episodes, both of them, because they might rival one another as a favorite episode, actually.
Yeah,
I remember you were a bit giddy after that first one.
Yes, first one,
and then maybe it was Old Hat after he was coming through with Black Label, and we got him.
No, it wasn't Old Hat at all. But I just really, like I said, the conversation with Frank was sort of a spin-off of reading the book. So I feel like, we had him on the show, and I felt like, again, I got to know him as a person, and I liked him as a person. And so I was more giddy. I'm always giddy when we get something out of somebody that we weren't necessarily expecting, because of course we expect them to talk about their new album and the concert tour and that sort of thing. Yeah,
those are, and I'm just going to throw this out there, those might be reasons why they might be in the running for favorite episodes of this year. Because there's something that happens in the interview that you go, God damn.
Yeah.
Oh, really? That you get excited about. Yeah.
You gained something.
Me as well. We get excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to recap, Frank Bello's EP is called Then I'm Gone. It was inspired by the writing of his book. He had this material that was inspired by the process of writing the book, and he wasn't sure what to do with it. So he collected it and released it as an EP. And I wanted to say the video was really cool. It's very raw kind of performance, but it's also got this nighttime scene where there's this car cruising and you're like in the driver's seat of the car looking through the windshield driving around at night in a city. And he talks in the book about a point in his life when he was in a really dark place. His brother was sadly murdered and the murder has never been solved. And Frank was very open in the book and on the Talk Louder podcast about he got into a really dark spot where he would drive around at night looking to avenge his brother's murder. And I'm wondering if that video is inspired by that, because you do have these scenes of this car cruising the city at night.
As heavy as that storyboard from the book plays out when he talks about it and where he was, so bad that he may or may not have, I don't recall if he actually admitted to getting some therapy about it, to getting some help.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
That very well might be spot on, Dave, for that the video is trying to portray that place or that physical moment where he's in the car cruising at night looking for you know who for you know what reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of scary, dude. That's not
it's heavy.
Light.
It's heavy. And if you didn't know that about Frank and his life, you might not make the connection. And even I'm assuming and speculating, but I can't help but think, because I've talked to the man and I've read the book, that maybe they're connected. But regardless, the EP is called Then I'm Gone. Frank Bello, man, what a great release from the bass player from Anthrax. Thank you, Frank. I love the punk rock edge of that first song, and I need to hear the rest. Another one of my favorites this year. This will come as no surprise to people that know me. Michael Monroe. The album is called I Live Too Fast to Die Young. And Michael is on one of the hottest streaks in rock and roll. I think this is probably his 5th consecutive album with the Michael Monroe Band that has just been, out of the park home run. I love this record. I love everyone before this one. He's just on a really hot streak right now, putting out just great high quality rock and roll. It's everything you want from Michael Monroe. It's, it's got some punk rock edge to it. His band is amazing, super tight. We've had Rich Jones on the podcast recently, who also is in the band The Black Halos. Speaking of great records that came out in 2022, How the Darkness Doubled, the new one from The Black Halos, is really great. But Rich is, we had Michael on the podcast this year, and talk about me being giddy. Man, I was over the moon about that episode. So he gave us some insight into the record. Slash does a guitar solo on here, and I had
some people when you post a link to the new episode, Michael Monroe. Some of the I enjoy some of the comments. And my friend Lori was like, the only thing she said was, "No way." And I commented, "Way."
Yeah, we got a lot of that reaction. I think people, we got a lot of that this year, not just with Michael, but we've had some great guests, and Michael was generous to give us
and that's enough. That's enough to say or not say without saying some legendary people. I know you're talking about Mike Monroe and his new record, and Rich Jones and the Black Halos, which I'll mention now. Surprised me a little bit because I know very little about the Black Halos, other than they're this great. I love what they're doing, the new video, whatever I know about them now. The research I did for the episode that we literally just did not that long ago. I thoroughly enjoyed that episode and those two guys. And obviously those guys have a connection that is quite rare, and they should not be taken for granted when people work off of each other really well. That comes across in the episode, and that might rival some of my favorite episodes this year by surprise. Is the Black Halos episode. I want people to check that out. Has that been released? That's out, right?
It's not out yet.
Oh,
it'll be out yet. By the time people are watching or hearing this episode, it'll be out. Yes.
I hope people enjoy that episode, because those guys are just bleeding rock and roll.
Absolutely. I can't mention Michael Monroe and albums he did this year without bringing up this one. Demolition 23. I'm trying not to get a glare.
Oh, that's good. I see it. Yeah.
So Demolition 23 originally came out in 1994, and it's been considered a long-lost gem among Michael Monroe fans and punk rock fans. It's probably the most punk rock thing he's ever done. But you couldn't get it anywhere. I think it was only available as a Japanese import, and it cost, a ridiculous amount of money. And I had a burned CD courtesy of our pal Johnny Venom, and that's really all I ever had. So I was familiar with the music, but I never had the proper release. And they redid this one, and I mean the packaging is amazing. I'm gonna try.
The cover's cool. The old school photo collage in the gatefold there, but the front looks like a Bauhaus cover or something.
Yeah, very dark and
dark. Yeah,
yeah, and so the packaging on this is amazing. They redid it. It's my copy's on blue vinyl. I don't know if they're all blue vinyl or whatever. But the lyrics are in here. There's little summaries about the inspiration behind the songs. There's color photos. So we waited a long time for this thing to be available, but it was well worth the wait. They did a really good job. Little Steven from Bruce Springsteen's band, the E Street Band, he was behind this record. I think he produced it and co-wrote a bunch of the material on here.
Oh, wow.
And there was, it was held up for the longest time. I don't know why it wasn't made available. And I don't think it's ever been released on vinyl. So this is brand new as well. But there was always some kind of problem with getting it out beyond Japan or wherever it was available. To the U.S. audience and to Michael's.
Given it's super easy for me, probably for you, because he's pretty much bleeds rock and roll. Little Steven, he seems to have his hands in like all of the cool sort of underground stuff. No pun intended, because he has a radio show called The Underground Garage.
Yeah.
And he produced that Archangels record, pretty sure, or did Nile Rodgers do that? Anyway, Little Steven is involved in a lot of, or is on the lips. His name is on the lips of everybody who's in this sort of like cool guy underground rock and roll and even punk rock thing. Ramones, the Hanoi Rocks, Michael Monroe. You're talking about this Michael Monroe stuff, and I'm not even taken aback one bit when you mentioned that he was involved in making that record. What was the original release of that material?
It came out in 94 originally.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You couldn't find it to save your life. And if you did find it, you're going to pay a small fortune for it. So it's now widely available on vinyl for the first time, and it's been repackaged to include, like I said, all the cool color photos.
Was that recorded in New York with him at the helm producing Little Steven?
I think so. Yeah, okay. I would have to dig into the liner notes.
What's the band? Who's on it?
Well, Sammy Yaffa's on it. Sammy has been Michael's right-hand man forever. The guitar player is a guy named Jay Henning.
That sounds familiar.
Who's sadly no longer with us. And the drummer, somebody Clark, his first name escapes me. But yeah, it's considered like this buried treasure that you couldn't find anywhere. And I'm so glad that it's out and it's been given the treatment it deserves, and it's repackaged. It's eye candy, it's ear candy, it's everything a Michael Monroe fan would want. And that album is solid. It's got there's a punk rock spirit that runs throughout it. There's a cover of a Johnny Thunder song. There's a cover of a Dead Boys song.
Wow.
There's a cover of a UK Subs song, and then the rest is original material. A lot of it co-written with Little Steven, and so it's got a punk rock spirit that runs throughout it, and it's dedicated to Stiv Bators, who was a good friend of Michael Monroe's.
Right.
So yeah, definitely one of the highlights of my year. I've been waiting for that record for so long. So.
Well, it's an impressive run. For Michael Monroe, as you say, bang, 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 consistency in his material, his health, he's just turned 60.
Yeah.
He looks great. He always looks great. He has more energy than anyone in the hall that he's playing with combined.
Yeah.
So he's really a worldly rock and roll treasure when you think about it. So you're the resident Mike Monroe geek here. I am more so much respect because he's a walking, living, breathing monster of a legend, and give credit to his band on the same level, Hanoi Rocks, because music would not be like, there's bands that would not exist without Hanoi Rocks, and I won't even go there. Let's move on and talk about some of our other fave episodes.
Well, Michael Monroe, of course. So go back and check that one out. Anyone watching, listening, that was a great episode. Speaking of great episodes, I really enjoyed this. Our friend Frank Meyer and Eddie Spaghetti from the Super Suckers. Frank from the Streetwalking Cheetahs, Eddie from the Super Suckers. They collaborated and put out this record called Mother Effin' Rock and Roll. And
does it really say effin'?
No, I'm censoring myself.
You're censoring yourself? No, motherfucking rock and roll.
There you go.
Yeah.
Motherfucking rock and roll.
Thank you, Dave. Don't be afraid.
It's my show. I can do what I want, right?
Yeah, of course. But that's why you got me to like yell at you, go, come on, Dave, don't be a wimp. I'm not familiar with the record, but
it's great.
Yeah, I love those guys and the style, the songs that I have heard. Just like, that it's right up your alley.
Yeah.
It's that dirty ass punk rock and roll, the
title says it all, man.
A little bit cowpunk,
Yes. Yes,
they do a cover of My Sharona on. That's the same record, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And they have the original lead guitar player from the Knack.
Wow, you've got a great memory.
Playing the solo on there, that's just crazy.
Yeah, and Ryder Size from Nashville Pussy is on on that track as well.
Nice.
Or at least she's in the video. She's definitely in the video.
Oh, okay.
I think she might have recorded the track too, maybe not.
I think she did.
But I've known Frank for years, and he's always been a great guy. He's a great storyteller. So
he slept on your living room floor before, so you have bragging rights.
He did indeed. Did
you tape off the carpet where he was laying and cut it out before you left and hung it on the wall in the garage just for keepsake?
I rolled it up and set it on fire.
Keep some. I was going to say you keep his DNA or no. Yeah.
No. So Frank is a great storyteller. We had him on the show to promote this record, and he brought along Eddie Spaghetti, which was a real treat. So we've had Frank and Eddie on the Talk Louder podcast this year promoting this record. And I told Frank, this might be my favorite thing he's done. He's a very prolific dude. It's like he puts out an album of some sort every month.
Or 5 books.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So much so that I can't even keep up with it all.
Andy has a day job working in a film crew, directing, producing, propping, etc. So he's a writer. He's writing all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason he's such a great storyteller. But he's highly entertaining. He's well worth watching. Go back and look at. We've had him on the show twice. And I know the episode with Eddie Spaghetti was this past year, and the other episode might have been late last year or
I think you're right.
This year. Regardless, check that one out too, Frank Meyer on the Talk Louder podcast.
So I want to interrupt you and talk about some of my favorite episodes.
Yes, please.
I mean, I don't know how many more favorites you can fit in here, Dave, but I'm going to get a couple of them in here. First off, Todd Latorre talked about that. Everyone, please check out that episode.
Yes.
You'll learn a lot, as we did. I liked Graham Bonnet.
Graham was great. Yes.
Graham Bonnet. We had him for a short 30-minute interview talking about the new record, which is doing quite well. They're actually just left, I believe, a couple days ago to start a UK or a Europe tour with Dead Daisies and that band FM.
Okay.
So those bands are Dead Daisies are an American band that has Glenn Hughes, I believe. Is Glenn Hughes still fronting them?
I'm not positive. They've gone through so many members.
Yeah, it's kind of a rock and roll collective. But it's Doug Aldrich and the Dead Daisy dudes, and they've had John Corabi in there. Anyway, we saw them with Glenn Hughes, and I want to say Glenn's still with them. So the fact that it's Glenn Hughes and Dead Daisies with Graham Bonnet and support in Europe is unbelievable. So it's exciting that we got to catch him right before or right after his new record was about to be released. The Graham Bonnet Band. I'm sorry, I don't remember the title of that record, but that's neither here nor there because it's the episode that I really loved. And here's why. I got to hear him tell stories I wanted to hear about. I mean, I don't even know if I let you get a word in on that episode because I was so excited to talk about his time with Michael Schenker. And then we found out together why that was such short-lived.
Yeah.
The story that he told was incredible. And it's one of my favorite stories to reminisce about on why he made that one record and then quickly exited.
Yes.
So if you want to know the skinny on why he was only in the Michael Schenker group for about 5 minutes and made one of the greatest Michael Schenker records ever.
No kidding.
Please watch that episode.
Yeah, he was a great storyteller. First of all, it was just an absolute honor to have him on the show. One of the greatest hard rock singers ever.
Oh yeah,
and just such a gentleman. And
he talked about Alcatraz a little bit, but it was more of just about Graham.
Yeah, and I don't want to ruin it for people, but there was even a Bee Gees connection. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Go check out the Graham Bonnet episode. We were honored to have him. I think we only had about 30 minutes with him, so it's a quick listen. But you'll get a lot out of it. I know we did. It was great.
Yeah. So my next one, I have to just keep moving here. Angry Anderson.
Of course. Yes.
Another, just like Mike Monroe, probably on the same scale. They don't have anything much in common as far as, height, weight, choice of makeup.
What they do have in common is credibility,
legendary status,
out the yin yang,
living, walking, breathing, fire breathing, legendary.
Yes.
who are not young men anymore, who are continuing to change people's heads about rock and roll constantly. A lot of people may have gotten Rose Tattoo on their radar, hence the cover of the Rose Tattoo song, Nice Boys Don't Play Rock and Roll, by the one and only Guns N' Roses, as early as 86, I believe. And that's just crazy. That's crazy. That episode, we had him on, I don't remember, 90 minutes, the hour and a half, maybe
2 hours.
2 hours.
Yes.
And he was very gracious with his time. And I actually liked how he would start somewhere and end up somewhere else. And we'd have to reel him back in to get back, which made his answers like 30 minutes long. So I guess we only asked him 4 questions is what that, if my math is right. But I know that we were kind of like giddy and jumping all over him, and he was very gracious. And
oh man, he was one of those guys. And here's one of the things I love about doing the podcast is once in a while we'll get a guest and we're wrapping up the show and they're basically saying, call me anytime. I'd love to come back. This was so much fun. And Angry was that guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, he wants to do a part 2. This is the legendary Angry Anderson that had such a great time with us. And he even says in the podcast that he felt like he bonded with us.
Yeah.
Like we were now we're all friends. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Well, he was a little bit forthcoming with his recent loss. He was very open. Believe he even teared up a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I tried to, we tried to just kind of, push along so it wouldn't last. I remember that we didn't like, do you want to stop for a minute? He kept going. He didn't say, give me a minute. Strong episode, super strong. And it was the many faces of Angry Anderson. You don't think that Angry Anderson just has one face, was just balls out, dirty old rock and roll, which is what he's known for. But at the same time, he's super smart. He has done so much charity work. The funny thing is if you talk to like old Aussie rock fans and stuff. Some of them, if they're long in the tooth enough to know that, or to have seen Angry and Rose Tattoo back in their prime, they say shit like, and we didn't bring this up, but I'm remembering this. They say that Angry's gone soft. And the reason they say that is because he did like True Value hardware ads, and I held some of them up to the camera in our episode. Yeah. And I'm like, what do you think of this? And he's like, fuck, well, how do you have that, mate? And I'm like, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm collecting anything that you're on. And I have his book and all that crap. Anyway, long-winded way to say that I enjoyed it so much. And Sean from Laughing Monkey Music podcast, we need to give him a thank you and a shout out, as well as Kat, his publicist, for just being cordial and helping that along and facilitating, because that was a scheduling nightmare. That was starting to be like, what do we do? Because he's in Australia,
right?
And it's dinner time for him, and I don't even know what time it was here. It was like the day before here. Yeah. They're a day away. So
I remember it well, because you and we taped that episode at 7 p.m. on a Sunday, which is very out of the ordinary for us.
So it was like 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. or whatever, or maybe later, 7:30.
It was lunchtime on Monday.
Oh shit! Okay.
Because remember, I asked him if he was, did he just have breakfast, and he goes, no, that was a couple hours ago. So there was a huge time difference, and we had to tape at a time that we're not.
I don't even know what the time difference is, but he was about to eat lunch and we were done with dinner.
Yeah, so, exactly.
How does that? Yeah, you do. Oh, and he's in the future.
Yes, exactly. He's a day ahead of us.
He's a day ahead of us. That's in the future. That's hurts my brain. Yeah, he
was great. He was a lot of fun.
God,
Again, I felt like we really
might be rivaling the Todd Latorre episode as my favorite. Just living legend. So
we really connected with him. I want to bring up somebody.
I'm gonna interrupt you and say John Bush episode. I love it. Yes. I love it. Promoting the Wasp tour that's pretty much for the most part sold out. It's still happening right now. It's ending in about a week or two in Los Angeles, which is also sold out. That episode is fantastic. It just came out a couple weeks ago, probably a month by the time this episode comes out. But John Bush, and those are my favorites of 22. So carry on.
No, I'm going to throw one out there because I remember you commenting after we were done, and we were done. We were turning off the cameras. Our guest had departed, and you told me how much you really liked the guy, and you didn't know much about him beforehand. And that's Brian Small from the Hangmen.
That guy was fantastic. What a great sort of like. He was on his phone in the basement in Montana.
Yeah, exactly. I think he was trying to escape from his family. Or
there was just shit hanging on the wall, tools and boxes, and I was like, that doesn't even matter. That stuff. I mean, it's like me and Dave tried a little bit to have a cool backdrop, but. For the most part, like George from Rhino Bucket and Brian and a bunch of other people, it's like just whatever. They just go to somewhere that it's quiet and their phone works.
Right.
And that's good enough, man. That's good enough. Yeah. So I really did enjoy talking to him. He's a dark horse.
Yes.
And has his struggles. And I'm not saying that's why his music is has so many layers.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that he writes, I feel like he would agree if I said he's barely in tune.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. His whatever like music school he went to is in the dirt in the backyard.
Yeah.
That's how he learned to write songs, to play guitar, to sing, that's how he learned. And that right there is why I feel like just how real that is and how like natural his abilities are, and how, because he goes through play by play about how him and his dudes write songs. He has like one guy that they bang stuff out together, whether it starts with his partner or him or whatever. I just love hearing him describe how simpleton that was. And when we hung up that day, I was just like, I was on the moon. I was just very, very happy that I'm really glad that that exists in rock and roll, because that's true.
Yeah.
There's none truer. Oh, I went to school. I decided that I was going to be a musician, and I went to Juilliard, and I went to Berkeley, and I did all this, and now I do this, and now I teach, and now I do this, and I've got all this stuff. So take all of that away and just have a kid who comes from nothing, who's pretty much, driving a broken pickup truck right now, and that's their car. That's what they do all the time. They have to work on it every day.
Yeah.
To get to work or whatever. And that's normal, and they're okay with that. That's the school that he's from. Like, man, if I don't get up and like bend this wire over, I can't start my truck to go bale hay. Or whatever it is. I'm making him sound like a cowboy. He's kind of a rock and roll cowboy, isn't he?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
He's gritty, and he's the cliche about being from the school of hard knocks is certainly appropriate when you talk about Brian Small.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of the Hangmen and have been for years and years. So it was a pleasure to have him on the show. And I remember when we got him on the show, he joined us on camera and he says, yeah, I was looking at your podcast and seeing all the great guests you have and wondering why the hell do they want to talk to me?
Right. He thought he was seeing star power, and he was,
I was like, no way, man.
like, I don't know. It's like Angry Anderson sitting at his desk in an office that looks slightly disheveled. I think that you're okay in the basement.
Yeah, Brian was great. He's just a real deal rock and roller, man. And as you say, it's kind of the charm of him and the Hangman is the unschooled approach to the music. Not to say that it's sloppy or anything, but it's got a very raw and ragged feel, and it sort of lends it a character of, it's very genuine sounding.
Yeah, if there's a scene in a movie in a bar, and there's a shot of whiskey on a pistol on the table, on a dirty bar with, you can smell it.
Yeah,
you can smell the bar when you walk in. Just as you open the door, you get wafted down with the smell of what's happening.
Yeah,
cigarettes, ashtrays, whiskey, dried up beer. It's not about being an alcoholic or addicted to cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's the lifestyle that and you write songs about what you know. I could be talking about NWA, right? They're writing about what they know. It's the same idea. Their smell would be, you walk into their jam room, NWA, it probably smells like weed.
Yeah,
walk into a bar where the Hangmen rehearse, or they rehearse in the back room of this shitty bar somewhere.
Yeah,
this is what you're going to get. Your ears are going to get what you're smelling and seeing.
It's going to smell like whiskey and gunpowder.
I love it.
Yeah. Brian Small, check out that episode and check out the Hangman's records. They've got plans for 2023. I know Brian's mentioned that they've got a new album on the way and a tour, and hopefully that tour brings them to Texas because I haven't seen him in years. Long overdue.
Brian Small needs to write a new song called Whiskey and Gunpowder.
There you go. Hey, there's the album title, the next album. A couple other guests, and then I've got one more album, and I've actually got a book that I want to share. But a couple guests just popped into my head that I thought were a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs with. Stevie D from Buck Cherry. He was a lot of fun, and he told us a great story about vaping with Eddie Van Halen. And I thought that was just
seems strange.
Another great storyteller. Just go watch that episode. Again, that one was a short one. He had about 30 minutes. He was actually on his tour bus outside of a gig. Yeah,
you can see people like, might even been Billy, like walking by the camera. He's like, hey, dudes, I'm trying to talk to these guys.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. Yeah,
we caught him just before sound check, and he told us some great stories about touring and some of his adventures. And he's just a great guy, a lot of fun. Another guy very similar, Johnny Martin from LA Guns. I had a blast with him. I just laughed the whole time.
Funny motherfucker, man.
Yeah, he's a character. They have a new album coming out. It's called Black Diamonds, and I think it's going to come out the early part of next year. So, man, talk about a band that's on a roll. LA Guns is another one right there with Michael Monroe and Saxon, in my opinion, that's on a streak right now. This will be 1, 2, 3. I think this will be their 4th full-length album since Phil and Tracy got back together.
Man, those old dogs are working hard.
Man, they are, and they're cranking them out, and they're all good, man. They're solid. Yeah. So Johnny Martin, LA Guns. I wanted to talk a little bit about this Leather Duchess. Some guys that you're familiar with. This album just came out. It's called Fatal Moon. And if the artwork looks familiar, it's because it was done by Tommy Pons, who did all the Dangerous Toys album covers. And Tyler Heath, the singer of this band, is a longtime listener and supporter of the podcast. And he was recently in town to do a gig here in Austin. And unfortunately, I had to miss the show, but I went out the night before and met him, and we just hung out and got to know each other a little bit. And so I've been spinning that record. And I would say you do guest vocals on this record, don't you?
Yeah, I'm on Rock and Roll Clown, I believe it's called. Rock and Roll Rodeo Clown. That's right. Yeah.
And they do a really interesting cover of Wasp, Sleeping in the Fire. And what I like is they totally rearranged it. It's not a carbon copy of the Wasp song.
He's singing in his natural tone all the way through.
Yeah.
And he sent that to me. Side note, he sent that to me to just because he knows I'm a Wasp fan. I like it because Wasp is not, they're on tour or currently on tour right now, which is great, but they're not playing that song. You know, there's not really any ballads. I think the closest thing to a ballad they're doing is the Crimson Idol. But I love Sleeping in the Fire. Tyler sent the track to me as soon as they were done recording and mixing, and to get my opinion and see if it would hit me sideways because he's not doing any of the high. I said, just make sure and do the harmony parts, because at the time it was just him singing the frontal melody, right, and no harmonies. So my suggestion was to do the harmonies, and I believe that they did. I don't have a copy of the record yet. Where the hell is mine, Tyler? I'm waiting by the post office, by my mailbox. The point is I think that these guys are carrying a torch pretty well for a certain style, and they're obviously not going to let anybody tell them that they're not allowed to do that, because
Tyler's voice, it runs the gamut. He could sound exactly like you, my friend, when he's got the Jason McMaster Dangerous Toys
the screech
of your voice.
Yeah, he has the screech.
It's uncanny. Like I know you've filled in for a couple of singers recently. Well, if Dangerous Toys ever needed a fill-in singer, I would nominate Tyler Heath if you got sick for some reason and couldn't do a gig.
It's let's hope that doesn't happen. Remember I said I don't want any singers getting sick, especially me.
I'm not wishing any ill will on you. But then the other extreme is he's, as you mentioned, he kind of has a more natural tone to his voice too. So he kind of ping pongs between these two different vocal styles.
Yeah.
And
I wrote, he covered 2 of my songs on his first country record. I wrote a country song called Baby Bird. And he covered that, and he did a country version of Promise the Moon from Dangerous Toys Pissed album, and that's on his country record, which I have. And so he's quite prolific. He's got a couple of different songwriting partners that he kind of stays on top of. So he's, he really tries. He's just like us. He has a day job, but he's all about his art.
Yeah, he's got his own record label too, Revolt Records.
Yeah, and they're reissuing the Broken Teeth Guilty Pleasure for the first time, I should say, on vinyl.
Right.
Which I guess the mailman is gonna, me and you are looking at our watch, standing by the mailbox, going, "Hey, Tyler,
think those go out in December.
Got some explaining to do.
I would say for anyone that's curious, if you're a fan of Dangerous Toys, you will really enjoy Leather Duchess. They kind of, like I said, Tyler can sound like Jason when he sings, and they also kind of have that a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor throughout their record. Which
I mean, I think that because Tyler, that's a good speculation that they are influenced by Dangerous Toys, among other bands of that ilk, right? But the funny lyrics, the steer skull on the drum kit, Tyler's high screech voice. There's a lot of Dangerous Toys.
Yeah, a lot.
There's a shopping list of Dangerous Toys influence going on.
But it's fun. It's a great listen.
No, it's flattery. Flattery can be great, and they're having a great time doing it. And it really, I'm flattered by it. I don't think that Tyler could have played me in the Bloody and Bruised Untold Story of the Back Room movie because he's about a foot taller than me. And I think that, just the reasons that Tyler and I get along are obvious. We're all we love Dan McCafferty. We love Rose Tattoo. We love AC/DC. We love Motorhead. We're both into thrash metal. We both like old, outlaw country.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he has a label because he has the motor for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And check out Revolt Records. That's Tyler's label.
And the band Leather Duchess. They got an album called Gunslinger, and this new one is called Fatal Moon. Wanted to
that's one more thing they have in common with Dangerous Toys is the artist.
I mentioned that at the top, Tommy Pons. Yeah, both albums too.
Yeah, but it's hard to keep up. They keep coming and coming, and So I'm refraining from selling Tyler any of my leather pants because I'm just afraid our DNAs will click together and he will become me, and I'm trying to keep that from happening.
He's halfway there, I think.
Without my help. Without my help. So flattery is what that is.
And I mean that with all due respect.
Of course. And you know what? He's a great guy. They're a fun band. Everyone should go see them.
Yeah. If you like Dangerous Toys, check out Leather Duchess. Switching gears a little bit, I read this book this year. It's called Somewhere in the Music I'll Find Me. And it was written by Lori Markvart. And Lori was a longtime Austin resident. She fronted a couple of different bands while she was here in Austin. And she's been out in California now for years. And I actually used to work with her at one time. And so we were friendly for a few years when she lived in Austin. And so this book is all about her aspirations to be a rock star. She makes no bones about it. It's basically the story of her chasing her dream. And she started off in a small town, moved to bigger cities that had more lively music scenes, got involved in bands, did the whole club circuit, did the whole station wagon tour, couch surfing, the whole thing. Everybody that's been in a band knows that story. But she does it really well. It's an easy read. The chapters are small. You can put it down and come back to it. And it plays out against a backdrop of there's some tough subjects. Mental illness. Her mother suffered from some degree of mental illness, and that was always a challenge for Lori. Lori lost a baby. I think the baby was born premature. And then she lost her father, who was her biggest supporter, and her father and mother were split up at the time. So she leaned on her father quite a bit. So all of these, tragedies is the only word that sounds accurate. She really does a great job of telling the story about trying to pursue a career in music and also revealing a lot about her personal life. She auditioned for Broadway. She was on one of those singing shows, The Voice or The X Factor or something like that.
Okay, wow.
And so anyway, I really enjoyed it because I have a lot of friends that have chase their dreams in the world of music. And but very few of them have put pen to paper and written the story in the form of a book. And I think she did a great job. So you can find that on Amazon and anywhere books are sold. Again, it's called Somewhere in the Music, I'll Find Me. It's written by Laurie Markwart, who went by the name Laurie Marks when she lived in Austin. And I believe her band, she fronted a band called Wicked Gypsy. Did the whole backroom circuit. They did the steamboat and backroom.
I know her. I know who you're talking about.
She knows you because when she sent me the book, she told me to tell you hello because she knows.
Oh, okay, excellent.
She doesn't name the band in the book, and I think there are reasons for that. But kind of one of those change the names to protect the guilty or something like that.
Right. Y'all know who y'all are. But anyway, it's a very good book, a very good read. It's an easy read, and it really captures a great story of her trying to pursue her dreams against a backdrop of a lot of drama. And does she mention any? That sounds fantastic, and I'm all about it. I would love to get a copy of that. Here's the deal, is to delve a little bit and ask you, have you read the book?
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, does she talk about Austin landmarks?
She talks about
Backroom or Continental?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
That's another leg on the animal. I mean, people around here in Central Texas that have been in the music scene, and whether they're in a band or just a fan, and have gone to gone to all the old haunts.
Right.
That's another reason for them to want to read about it.
That's why I think I connected with it. I mean, I connected with it on a number of levels. I'm a writer, and I appreciate books and writers and authors and that sort of thing. She does talk about the back room, the steamboat. So I'm familiar with the Austin music scene, obviously. So it resonated with me on that regard. And, I can relate to the story of chasing your dreams when it comes to rock and roll and being in a band and all the challenges that being in a band presents, the personality clashes, in some cases, the abuse, the drugs and alcohol and that sort of thing. And just the chemistry of trying to keep 4 or 5 people together in a creative process. So I connected with it on a few different levels, but I think you take any one of those levels and it would be a good read for anyone. So,
excellent.
Yeah, great book. Man, we got to wrap up here. I just wanted to throw a couple more quick ones out there. I wanted to get the names in this episode because I thought they were worth mentioning. Another great release this year was an EP by a band called Fugitive, featuring Blake Ibanez, who was the guitar player in Power Trip, a much loved and sorely missed Texas thrash band, hardcore crossover type band. His new project is called Fugitive. They've got an EP called Maniac, and if you liked Power Trip, you'll love Fugitive. It's in the same vein as the Power Trip, thrashy, kind of borderline hardcore, guttural vocals, but melodic. It's still it's not all Cookie Monster. It's a good listen. So shout out to Fugitive and their Maniac EP. We've been really blessed this year. I think we really hit a stride late this year with Jim Florentine, Don Jameson. You mentioned Angry Anderson. We had Kirk Winstein.
We've had some of our favorite people. There's people that I'm in touch with that I'm not close with who are legendary. I seem to be the star fucker or the stalker for people who are kind of legendary, people who I have a lot of respect for on multiple levels. And one of the people that I'm trying to get on the show are Caton DePena, however you say his name, Caton DePena from Hyrax. Yeah. It's just a legend from the Los Angeles thrash metal scene who's still doing festivals and he's just all over the fucking place. Yeah. I'm trying to get him to commit. Alex Skolnick, of course, from Testament, trying to get him to commit. And they've been very gracious in staying in touch with me about the idea of them joining us here on the Talk podcast. So there's people like that. There's more to come. Let's mention that we have been invited to go to Nashville this March.
Yeah.
We are going to be at the annual, I think it's annual, Rockin' Pod. I think it's like the 6th or 7th. Imagine a like music festival type of a thing, but this is for podcasts that interview artists or art related or music related.
Yeah.
And we will be busy. They invite all kinds of like artists there, and we will be interviewing them there on a schedule that they give us, as well taping those episodes so we can share them with you. But then on top of that, there's like the main stage. So picture a Talk Louder booth where we're all set up and we can hang out and sell merch, but we are interviewing people on the spot.
Yeah.
They have a main stage that me and Dave will go to and interview the same scheduled artists. Maybe some of the bigger artists will be on stage and filmed professionally, and they will give us like a thumb drive with those episodes, I believe edited live on the fly,
Wow.
which will be great. And that's happening March. The dates are
17th through the 19th in Nashville, Tennessee. So
that's right. At the Nashville Coliseum. It might have a different name than that, but I'm sticking with Nashville Coliseum.
Yeah, I like that. It's got a good ring to it.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that. And I'm expecting to see a lot of Nashville people. Some of the Accept guys live in Nashville. And Steve Rochelle from Tough is going to be there. I don't know who all is going to be there.
Yeah, the roster is still being finalized. Ron Keel, I think, is going to be there.
Okay, great.
Who's going to be there that I want to talk to is
Mark Weiss.
Mark Weiss. Yep.
Mark Weiss is going to be there.
Photographer extraordinaire.
He'll talk all day. So that's good. That's for a podcaster. That's great.
Yes.
One question, 90 minutes later, you're like, we got to wrap it up, Mark. That was great.
Yeah.
I know everything about Cinderella now.
Right. Mark has taken some of the most iconic photos of the 80s hard rock scene. He shot the Stay Hungry Twisted Sister album cover.
Unbelievable. Slippery When Wet.
He took the back photo of the Dangerous Toys debut record, right?
Yes, he did. Dirty Looks, Bon Jovi, it goes on, and Motley Crue, Ozzy goes on. Early in his career, Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne befriended him, and he became a touring photographer for them. Yeah, which is sick. I think that what that was for is like their tour program. Remember in the 80s, tour programs, you could buy them at the merch table. I think they were putting together one of those, and he was the main photographer for that. Yeah.
Well, a lot to come in 2023 from us here at the Talk Louder podcast. We appreciate all of you for listening and watching in 2022, and you
guys get you some merch. We still have some coffee mugs. We have some T-shirts. I just ordered a whole new batch of T-shirts, so we are fully in stock. Yeah, leave some comments. We love you. It's been a fantastic year, and cheers to you guys. We won't see you again probably until 2023. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and all that.
Yeah, and hit subscribe.
See you later.
On behalf of my co-host Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, thanking you all for another year of the Talk Louder podcast. We'll see you in 2023.